Welcome into another video, and the first round of the NFL draft has officially concluded. A long one, a long night, kind of some
Definitely.
shocker selections, and we're here to talk about our Chicago Bears, who selected Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan, with the 10th overall pick. Lucas, initial thoughts, reaction as the commissioner listed off Colston Loveland as the selection.
Yeah, I mean, initial thoughts, it was not the name I expected to hear, even at the position. And I'll say it wasn't the position I necessarily expected either. So it was definitely a surprise, but I think, knowing what he can bring to a Ben Johnson offense, it's hard not to get excited. And, um, you know, last time we chatted, we predicted Tyler Warren to the Bears with their first pick. And so we weren't too far off thinking that, but knowing that I guess it was just their preference. It's not like Warren was off the board, and we'll never know if we got the sloppy seconds or not. We got our guy. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, 100%. They went with the selection that they wanted, with Warren still being there. I thought Warren was going to be the selection. I was sitting there as, the pick came in. I was really hoping for a trade back in the moment. But as the pick came in, I was sitting there going, okay, I think it's either going to be Warren or the likes of Shamar Stewart. Banks went,
Yeah.
Membo went, Campbell was gone. I didn't think they were going to go Simmons that early, and we just saw Simmons go at 32. So league kind of felt the same. And Loveland did come as a surprise to me. I think over the last week, tight end has, I wouldn't say warmed up on me, but become more of a reality with how the rest of the league has viewed the number 10 selection.
hmm
Loveland being the selection overall was kind of a shocker. That being said, I'm very excited about it. I think if I wanted a tight end, Loveland made more sense for our offense. That's my opinion. I think he
Yeah,
complements Met better. And this, gives you versatility. You can move off of Komet as well if you want. Like, I think
for
Loveland
sure.
is a much better prospect, obviously, coming out of college than Komet was. I think, was worthy of a top, 15 pick. I wouldn't necessarily say he falls into the top 10 selection like he was, but top 20, top 15 guy. And, who are we to sit here and say that Ben Johnson's in the wrong? Like, if
Yeah.
that's a guy who he thinks can turn into the next Sam Laporta, am I going to be one to sit here and hate on it?
Right. Yeah. I just saw a stat. He was targeted on 41% of his routes last year. Like just an insane number for a tight end. And I think, the broadcast were talking about how he's really just a big wide receiver, but he's still a really good blocker. He's really physical. And so knowing that we have, the hopes are at least that we'll have a third reliable passing option for Caleb Williams, someone who can still contribute to the blocking game and help out with our run game, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly here. But yeah, it's hard not to get excited.
100%. Now, what do you think this means for Cole Kmet? I mean, we're talking now the potential of him really bumping down in the options for this offense. You would have to think that with the selection being a top 10 pick, that Komet immediately I mean, obviously they're going to be used in much different scenarios, and I'm sure 12-man sets will be used often. But I mean, if we're talking receptions and touches, Loveland's going to be taking his fair share here. It started
Yeah.
and being Komet guys, this could be, a big thing.
Yeah. How many yards did Keenan Allen have last year? I'm trying to think. Like there's
He fell
some
into that
yards on the table.
he fell into that 800 range. All of them.
Yeah, and Cole Kmet was like less than 500, more than
Yep.
400. And so, I think Loveland, we can realistically expect a little bit more than that. Year one as a rookie, like he's going to be a big part of this offense. And then there's still targets for Cole Kmet for sure. It's not like we have that true wide receiver three right now. And so I think we expect Caleb's overall numbers to go up with the new offense, with him being in his second year in the league. And then this new weapon, I don't think really changes how Cole Kmet will be used too much. Albeit we weren't necessarily thrilled with the lack of production that we saw last year compared to what we know we can get out of him.
100%. And we've had, especially coming off a 2024 year, two picks last year that kind of make you jump out of your seat. This one necessarily didn't make me jump out of my seat, but looking back on it, I'm happy we still have both of our second-round picks. I'm
Yep.
happy that we still have pick 72. You know, did I want us maybe in the moment to come up for Ashton Jeanty? I think at that point I was kind of like, you're in the heat of the draft. You know, everybody's having fun. You kind of want to, you know, make some swings, do something fun and exciting. And they didn't. Now that it's over, I'm happy that but as that first, you know, those first 9 picks were falling, what was kind of your thought process through it?
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed when Genty went to the Raiders, gave a little sign. It's just like, all right, now I have no clue what's gonna
Yeah.
happen. I think the first 4 definitely went as expected. With the trade was just a monstrous haul for Cleveland. Like,
What the
what a freaking offer. And then Atlanta later on in the draft too, that one surprised me. But
a next year's
um,
first, dude? What the hell is that?
I know, like that's something you do if you're like a Kansas City and you know you're getting 32, but Atlanta, you're not that guy. But yeah, after Genty went, I had no idea if we were gonna go Banks. I thought that for the longest time. I was like, all right, this just makes a lot of sense here. And I was fine with that. We mentioned Banks as like we wouldn't be too excited about type of guy last time we talked, but I talked myself into it as I would have done with most of these guys. Who am I kidding? But definitely a little bit disappointed when Genty went to the Raiders because I was seeing the vision. I was seeing the future with Genty back there for a
Yeah,
little bit.
100%. And then once Banks went, I was really like, okay, wow, here we go.
Yeah,
Like, this is going to be an interesting pick. I wonder if Banks would have been the selection
right.
if he
Never
was
know.
there at 10. You never know. You never know, and we never will know now. Now, here we go. Moving on to tomorrow when this comes out, it will be coming, moving on to tonight. Bears are lined up with the 39th and 41 and 72. What are we feeling for direction here?
Well, first of all, I know me and you are going to have a great day tomorrow. So no matter what the picks do, there's something to look forward to. I
Yeah.
think we gotta cover the running back position.
Hmm.
That's number one. So I don't know. I hope that that's going to come with 39, just because, or maybe even earlier. There's a lot of running back needy teams ahead of us in the first few picks. I mean, Cleveland's got 2 picks ahead of us, and they don't really have a starting running back right now. New England picks right before us at 38. They don't really have a great starting running back, and they have an offense that wants to take off here. So we may have to get a little aggressive there. There's still a few good names. Like we didn't see Henderson go in the first round, which was happy to see that. So we still got probably 3 guys: Judkins, Henderson, I'm a Caleb Johnson guy. I think you might argue more for Scadaboo, and that's all right. Um, so I just want to see one of those guys drafted and
Yeah,
coming to the Windy City. And then a little disappointed to see Simmons go with that last pick of the first round. I think that
100%.
once he saw that they were picking and he was still there, it just made too much sense. There's still a lot of good edge rushers too. Ezraku is one of those guys where a lot of people were talking about him in the teens to Atlanta. Then they
Yep.
traded up and still didn't take him. So that'd be an interesting one that I'd be real thrilled about, to be honest.
Hmm.
So we'll see. A lot of options. I think the one thing with us drafting tight end at 10, we had a lot of options coming in, and nothing's really off the table, outside of tight end, obviously, with these second round picks. We weren't really ever debating taking a tight end with 39 or 41. Like Mason Taylor's was never really one of those guys that we wanted there. So, nothing's really changed going into the second round.
Yep.
I'm excited to see what we do.
Yep. And I think that's what me and you were both kind of in agreement upon was with 10, it's kind of an open field. This is going
Hmm.
to give us a better idea of what we really want to hone in on at
Yeah.
39, 41, and 72. I would be stunned, absolutely stunned, if a trench player is not one of the 2 picks. I will say that. Like, I think I would be very shocked if not.
Yeah.
If they wait until 72, I would almost kind of even be upset. But I agree with you. In my opinion here, it's got to be trench RB. And then you can, I know we've discussed safety. I know
Hmm.
we've discussed cornerback as a possibility. But okay. But I want to go trench, running
Yeah.
back, vice versa, unless Will Johnson is available still at 39.
That is one name that came to mind. Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy that he's there.
Insane. A player who I think was arguably worthy of a top 10 selection. I remember before I really dove deep into this class when me and you got together in March, I was like, Will Johnson, if he's there at 10, I want him. And,
Yeah.
Learning the class a little bit more and our needs a little bit more, I was kind of like, okay, let me pump my brakes here. But if we selected him at 10 tonight, it wasn't going to be a move where I was going to go, throw myself off of the roof.
Right.
I'm a big Will Johnson believer. I think he's my number 2 cornerback in this class. Hairston going ahead of him, I think made sense for Buffalo, but still shocked me.
Yeah.
But that is a guy I would not be upset with if he was a selection at 39, if he's still there.
Yeah. It's interesting. I kind of realized or maybe thought for the first time that he might not go in the first round when I think it was Schefter tweeted out, like, a lot of teams mid-draft tweeted out, a lot of teams are concerned about the injury and the status of Will Johnson. I'm like, all right, if you're like going out of your way to say that, and we're, kind of in that range where he might be picked, are you telling me that we shouldn't expect to hear his name for a while? And so I don't know. It's hard to expect that. It continues to 39. I'd be surprised, but like you said, I'd be thrilled. He's fantastic, and as long as he's healthy, love to see him on the Bears.
100%. Mike Green, also a very interesting name, who fell out of the first round. I know there's a lot of character issues and like domestic dispute issues with him, so that is why I would assume he has not been selected today. But still an interesting selection if he's there at 39. Wouldn't be, against that. But we have some options. Nick Scourton did not end up going today. Eamon Wari, I don't know how I feel about him, but still an option, still on the board. And you would have to assume there's a chance that Cleveland does take Shedeur Sanders with one of these picks. So that could be nice for us.
So I think I'm assuming that.
And Sanders still being available is good. Like, that is like good for us. Shocking, to say the least. I definitely did not see him still being available. I knew that there was a chance that he wasn't going to be a first-round pick. And I was kind of shocked to see him not, selected tonight. But good for us. I would hope that at least somebody's coming up for him if Cleveland does not want to select him. But I like that. So him off the board tomorrow. That leaves only 6 selections then between us. Let's say even 2 of those guys go running backs. Let's say it's Henderson or Caleb Johnson, Judkins. I think we're going to have an option at 39 for one of those running backs.
Yeah.
And any other guys that you have your eye on for tomorrow? I was very disappointed to see Connerly and Simmons go right there in the last 4 picks. Would love to have one of these guys available for tomorrow. But anybody else that you're kind of honing in on, maybe looking into tomorrow?
Yeah, I think the one name that comes to mind, I'll circle back to our boy Landon Jackson. We haven't touched on him. I don't think that we were really expecting him to go in the first round by any means. So maybe it is one of those guys where realistically he will be there. I also think that maybe, there's a good chance I've just been stuck in my head on this one guy who I saw some good tape on. So maybe he's one of those Felixes that we get attached to in the pre-draft process that really ends up falling. And, at the end of the day, I'm no scout, but he has the motor, he has the tape. So I'd love to see him, on that defensive line.
Oh, I'll never forget in 2023 pounding my fist for Aditamiwa Adebawore.
Yeah.
He went in the 4th round, and I wanted us to pick him at like 52. I was like, what are we doing? Why didn't we take him? We passed out him 3 times because we had 2 seconds that year and a third, and I'm like, oh, my God, what's wrong with him? What's going on? Why are we not taking this kid?
Never heard his name again.
Yep. I think he has 1 sack in like 2 seasons with the Colts.
Stick to our day jobs.
100% Landon Jackson could end up being one of those guys. Yeah, I think we're going to have some talent available at 39. One of these running backs will be there for sure. Like you said, Donovan Izuruwaku will still be there. Landon Jackson, Nick Scourton, Mike Green still available. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And then what's his name? The Darius Alexander from Toledo. I know that was another one of those guys that you could argue was potentially, going to sneak into the end of the first round. Eamon Wari. The Bears are going to have some players available at 39 and 41. Gun to your head right now, who do you think the selections will be?
If I had to guess right now, I would say that it's probably – I think they'll take an offensive tackle with their second pick. I think Is it Ursary from Minnesota?
Yep, somebody
Th-
who's really
th-
jumped up the boards.
Yep, I can see that being 41 and then 39. Wishful thinking. I'm going to say Caleb Johnson. I think Travion Henderson goes a little bit before, but I'm going to say Caleb Johnson's our pick at 39.
Okay, I'm gonna match you with Judkins
I like it.
and Landon Jackson. Those are my two picks, and then at 72, who knows? Kind of all dogs go. We'll have a better idea there, but overall, not a bad first day. Not a bad first
No,
day. It was, I think it kind of peaked with the Hunter trade. That was
yeah.
kind of like, and they were saying like it's going to be a crazy night, and then it really didn't get that crazy. So was kind of disappointed with how the rest of it turned out. Overall, the NFC North, I wasn't thoroughly impressed with all of their selections. Golden could be interesting to
Yeah.
Green Bay. I know I had him as my wide receiver 4, so I think they got a good guy. I thought Luther Burden is a better selection. Luther Burden, also a name still available, my wide receiver 1. So that's going to be interesting to see where he lands tomorrow. But Golden could be scary in Green Bay. Overall, Donovan Jackson didn't really get me to jump out of my seat from Minnesota. And Tyleek Williams, all 5 of my top 5 defensive tackles going. Not a guy who I thought was worthy of a first-round selection, though. More of a run stuffer, just a pure, run stuffing guy. So
Hmm.
could be good for them. They needed something like that. Overall, the NFC North selections, did not make me overly jump out of my seat today. So I'm feeling pretty good about night 1.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, I was happy to see Minnesota go trenches just because it's kind of boring. It's not something that jumps out as like a
Scares
future
you.
bear killer. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we still need to bolster up that defensive line, of course, so they may have the edge, but nothing that scares me immediately, I'll say. Golden's interesting though, like they have a deep wide receiver core for sure, but none of them have really lived up to a wide receiver 1. And so if they really feel that conviction on Golden being the guy, then maybe that's something we should keep an eye out for.
Could
And
be.
then Detroit's just really good. Like I was thinking about who they were going to take, and there's just a lot of different positions they could have gone just to build up those strengths. But defensive line, I think biggest need, like you said, run stopper. That's just a solid team making a solid move. So yeah, I don't know. I think at least initial reaction seems like some people don't think the Bears made the best move, but I don't know. I just can't see how this isn't a lot of production being added into what should be a fun offense.
Oh, I mean, it very well could be like a Noah Fant in like 5 years.
Yeah,
There's the nerves of that. It
yeah.
does make me nervous. But if this kid's Sam Laporta or like, some like Brock Bowers esque, am I going to sit
Hmm.
here and bitch and moan about it?
Probably
No,
not.
not at all. Not at all. But that's going to wrap up today's video. So excited for tonight. Round 2 and round 3 going to be very interesting to see what the Bears do. Lucas, thank you so much for hopping on, brother.
Absolutely. Bear down, baby.
Bear down. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.